everyone and welcome to another video. So I thought I'd try something new today. I thought I'd do another What If special, this time for Halloween. So we'll naturally look at some spookier scenarios, or at least ones to do with spookier stories. We're going to look at 3 different scenarios for this. 2 of them are written by me and 1 is by Naughty Orchid 12. So without any further ado, let's get into it. To start things off, we have What If Doctor Who Meets Scratchman had been made. For those of you who don't know, this was a proposed Doctor Who film in the 1970s. It was 4th Doctor actor Tom Baker himself who came up with it, together with his then fellow cast member Ian Marter, with them working on it whilst they were down at the pub during rehearsals when they weren't needed. The show's production team at the time showed very little interest in making it into a TV story, as did the BBC as a whole. So Baker and Marter decided to turn it into a film instead. They worked on a rough screenplay and they tried to find a British film studio that would be interested, but to no avail. So they tried appealing it to American studios instead, but that wasn't successful either. At one point, loads of young Doctor Who fans gave money to Tom Baker for the film's production, after being misquoted in a newspaper article. Baker then had to return all the money to them. Eventually, one thing led to another and the project just never materialised into anything. A novelisation of the story was later released, ghost-written by James Goss, with Tom Baker as a consultant. But what if things had gone differently? Now, from what I could find on the internet, it seems that the project never went anywhere due to there being no studio interested in financially backing it. So that's the biggest hurdle for this scenario. Perhaps I'm being too biased, as I love the idea so much, but I think Hammer Films could work as a studio option, or maybe ITC Entertainment as an alternative. Regardless of which one we go with, we'll say production has started by February of 1977, with the planned locations in Scotland and Lanzarote being used. Because this would be taking place after Sarah Jane and Harry had both left the show, new companions were planned to replace them, unless of course production had started a year earlier, which is what I would prefer personally, just so we can keep Sarah and Harry in the story. For these replacements, one of them was supposed to be played by British singer and actress Twiggy. Another casting that was planned was Vincent Price as the titular Scratchman, aka the Devil or Harry Scratch. And if Hammer is producing the film, Ian Ogilvy, probably got that wrong, so sorry, could play the male companion. He often did a lot of their films, after all. The film had plans to also feature Daleks, with the Cybermen potentially appearing as well. Although, due to some uncertainty over whether there would be some rights issues with them, Baker and Marter had come up with an alternative in some aliens called cyborgs, just in case. There were also scarecrows and the Greek god Pan. It probably would have been released by the end of the year or sometime in early 1978 at the latest. This means it would be released not too long after the original Star Wars, with comparisons between the two of them no doubt being made among critics and audiences alike. If it had indeed been made, Doctor Who Meets Scratchman might end up being mostly a strange little oddity in the show's history, although I'm sure it would have its fans and might even gain somewhat of a cult status. Personally, I've always found it very intriguing, but I don't know whether I feel like we missed out on something great or not, with it never being made in real life. I remember liking a novelisation of it when it was released about 6 years ago now, but I think it's definitely due for a revisit sometime soon, as I just can't remember loads about it. Anyway, we now turn to the second scenario for this special. What if the 5th Doctor was in Poltergeist, as in the original one from 1982. As I said at the start, this one was written by my friend Naughty Orchid 12, so it's all from his perspective and with his thoughts, not mine. The year is 1982. Pete Davison had just started his run as the 5th Doctor. That same year, Steven Spielberg would also be in development of his second horror movie, Poltergeist, starring Heather O'Rourke and Craig T. Nelson. Directed by Tobe Hooper, the film centers on strange and creepy happenings besetting an average California family, Freelings, when ghosts commune with them through the television set. Initially friendly and playful, the spirits turn unexpectedly menacing. And when their 5-year-old daughter, Carol Ann, goes missing, parents Steve and Diane turn to a parapsychologist and eventually an exorcist for help. The film was a critical success with 88% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's only one of my favourite Spielberg movies of all time, as in it's not mine, as I always watch it every October as a tradition, as it gives me quite the creep factor. But what if things were different? What if, in an alternative timeline, Poltergeist was written as an episode of Doctor Who? Now, this was an idea I, as in Notty, came up with as an extension of an idea where I decided to take a famous horror movie and combine it with a Doctor Who episode. The rules are as follows. You can choose any horror movie, but the twist is whoever became the Doctor that year would have to star in a story with that idea. So let's say, as an example, Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1978 with Tom Baker's 4th Doctor. But for this theory, the one I chose as an experiment was the movie Poltergeist from 1982. I feel like in this timeline, Poltergeist sadly would have to be a cancelled film in order for this idea to work. Michael Gray and Mark Victor turned down the opportunity to write Spielberg's script. So Spielberg, after looking around for some US scriptwriters for a while, settles on trying to make an international co-production. Some phone calls later, he has a 4-part miniseries with the BBC. This then progresses a little bit further to become a 4-part Doctor Who episode, with then controller of BBC One, Bill Hart, asking JNT to accommodate the script in a new season of Doctor Who, and, if possible, have Spielberg serving as a creative consultant. It's then picked up by writer Christopher Bailey to make the story according to Spielberg's specifications. With season 19 taking a starter in Peter Davison's Doctor Who career, we need to scrap a particular story that could make room for this episode. In this case, this was really tough to decide, but if I have to be serious, I'd probably have to scrap Kinder in favour for this episode. That also kind of makes sense given that Christopher Bailey wrote Kinder and Notty's having Christopher Bailey write this version of Poltergeist instead. So with that being said, let's get into the synopsis. And before I get into the details of the plot, if you don't want to know what happens in Poltergeist, then I recommend you click off this video because there are a lot of spoilers for the movie. Poltergeist, written by Christopher Bailey, executive produced by Steven Spielberg. Part 1. Stephen and Diane Freeling live in the planned community of Crawley, England. Stephen is a successful real estate agent, and Diane looks after their 3 children, 16-year-old Dana, 8-year-old Robbie, and 5-year-old Carol Ann. Late one night, Carol Ann inexplicably converses with the family's television set while it displays post-broadcast static. The next night, she fixates on the television again, and a ghostly white hand emerges from the screen, followed by a violent earthquake. As the family is shaken awake by the quake, Carol Ann eerily intones, "They're here." Whilst the TARDIS is orbiting the planet, the Doctor is still trying to get Tegan back to her Heathrow, whatever is haunting the family starts attacking and throwing the TARDIS around. The Doctor manages to restabilise the TARDIS, however, Nyssa bangs her head against the TARDIS console and is rendered unconscious. The Doctor and Tegan take her to a bedroom in the TARDIS, whilst Adric starts to run numbers trying to figure out what's going on. The following day is filled with bizarre events. A glass of milk spontaneously breaks, silverware bends, and furniture moves on its own. These phenomena initially seem benign, but soon grow sinister. During a severe thunderstorm, the gnarled backyard tree seemingly comes alive. A large limb crashes through the children's bedroom window, grabs Robbie, and pulls him outside into the pouring rain and attempts to devour him. While the family rushes outside to rescue Robbie, Carol Ann is pulled into a portal inside the closet. After saving Robbie from the tree, the family frantically search for Carol Ann, only for her voice to call out from the television. Whilst all the issues plague the Freeling household, similar phenomena affect the TARDIS, with doors opening and closing around the Doctor and Tegan, whilst Adric desperately tries to keep control over a computer that has started calling him names and hitting him with electric shocks. Eventually, the trio are able to get back together, and the Doctor tells Adric to stop trying to use maths to learn about the beast right now, and instead find out where it's operating from. He does and sets the coordinates. When he does, the phenomena stops, and the Doctor notices that the TARDIS has been tapped into a new frequency. He gives it a listen and hears the same voice as what came out of the family television. Tegan reads off where the coordinates are and asks, "What now then?" To which the cliffhanger is the Doctor saying, "I suppose we'll have to make a social call." Part 2. The next day follows as the blue box arrives. Doctor, Tegan and Adric all step out, looking to find where the readings lead them to. The Doctor says, "Modern Earth, 1982, Crawley. Not quite where we wanted, but close at least. Something drew us here, I expect." Adric asks the Doctor, "Was it an error in the TARDIS, Doctor? The readings were so strange and illogical." The Doctor says, "No, the old girl doesn't act up this badly. The frequency makes that clear enough. Something's playing with us. I felt an innocent mind at stake in that transmission. And whatever it is," the Doctor stops as he reaches the Freeling household and knocks on the door, "it all links back to here." Diane opens the door, sees the man and asks, "Are you the researcher we called for?" The Doctor shakes his head. "No, sorry, my transport got attacked by a strange force whilst we were going past your house, and I thought I might do some investigations of my own. I'm the Doctor, and these are my friends, Tegan and Adric." They walk through the door, Adric expressing skepticism in Steve's claims of the supernatural. Steve leads them to the room, telling the Doctor about these disturbances and that their daughter has disappeared. The rest of the night, Robbie had slept with Steve and Diane for comfort. The Doctor asks, have there been any disturbances captured or recorded in that room? Steve says that they don't enter that room anymore as the Doctor opens the door, and the entire room is floating around, going crazy. Where the Doctor then says, "Well, that is a new one." Dr. Adric and Tegan go for some tea, whilst things are still moving around. After a small back and forth between the main trio about what's going on, Tegan says, "If I'm not mistaken, Mrs. Freeling." Diane cuts her off, saying, "Just Diane," leading for Tegan to continue. "Diane, I think you've got a poltergeist problem. You know, a ghost that decides to up and attack people?" Adric scoffs at this, but the Doctor cuts him off and lets Tegan finish. "They usually try to drive the household crazy, puts everyone in danger, and it seems to add up scarily well with what's going on here. Last I checked, they go after about a year." The Doctor smiles at Tegan's knowledge and congratulates her just as the lights start to flicker. "Ah," the Doctor says, "I think our poltergeist might agree with you there, Tegan." Diane then says, "Then we don't have much time, Doctor. My daughter is somewhere alive in this house." The Doctor, in shock, takes in what he's just heard. "Somewhere in this house? Then we haven't a moment to lose." The Doctor gets up, pulling out his sonic screwdriver, smiling at his friend, "You should come very much in handy," before explaining that, as far as he's concerned, Carol Ann is collateral and should be prioritised. Late at night, the Doctor and the Freelings, after hiring some additional help, start turning on the TV. As they listen to the static with help from the Doctor's sonic screwdriver, they hear Carol Ann's voice, where she asks, "Mummy, where are you? And I'm scared of the light." Adric sits in shock hearing these messages first. The Doctor calls Carol Ann, saying, "Carol Ann, I'm here to help you. Can you hear us?" Leading the Doctor to question, what would they want with a child so small? As a rift goes off above their heads, as the lights flicker and a huge void appears above their heads, and the Doctor looks in shock, seeing the light, and just then, Carol Ann's voice looms again, saying, "Mummy, there's somebody here?" The Doctor, using a sonic, feels this exact reading as his eyes widen. I should have known there was something off. Caroline asks, "Is it you, Mummy?" The doctor chimes, yelling, "Caroline, that's not your mother," leading to Caroline crying and calling for help as she screams and the television statics, leading Diane to run up and feel Caroline's presence when the doctor and group feel a large blast throughout the house, traumatizing and scaring them as it cuts to black. Part 3. The doctor and the group feel a large blast throughout the house, traumatizing and scaring them as the doctor gets an idea. If that's the way out, then maybe somewhere in this house there's a way in. Later, the group set up cameras to see if there's any activity they can catch. The doctor sees up the stairs an essence of life. Doctor and group encounter thousands of spirits throughout the room, then it turns into the beast for a split second. Realizing that's what's holding Caroline, he tells Tegan, Adric and the family why he thinks this beast is holding Caroline. There is no death, the doctor says. There is only a transition to a different sphere of consciousness. Caroline is not like those she's with. She is a living presence in their spiritual, earthbound plane. They are attracted to the one thing about her that is different from themselves, her life force. It is very strong, and it gives off its own illumination. It's a light that implies life and memory of love and home and earthly pleasures, something they desperately desire but can't have anymore. Right now, she's the closest thing to that, and that is a terrible distraction from the real light that has finally come for them. You understand me? These souls, who for whatever reason are not at rest, are also not aware that they have passed on. They're not part of the consciousness as we know it. They linger in a perpetual dream state, a nightmare from which they cannot awake. Inside the spectral light is salvation, a window to the next plane. They must pass through this membrane where friends are waiting to guide them to new destinies. Caroline must help them cross over, and she will only hear her mother's voice. This is insane. They tear a hole in the web of time. Adric then asks, "What was that beast we saw a glimpse of, Doctor?" The doctor says, "It's a terrible presence in there with her. So much rage, so much betrayal. I've never sensed anything like it. I don't know what hovers over this house, but it was strong enough to punch a hole into this world and take your daughter away from you. It keeps Caroline very close to it and away from the spectral light. It lies to her, tells her things only a child could understand. It's been using her to restrain the others. To her, it simply is another child. But to us, it is the beast. Now, let's go and get your daughter." Doctor and Tegan slowly start to build a device that will let them enter into the beast dimension and uncover what it actually is. He also commands Caroline to run towards the light and instructs Diane and Steve Freeland to do the same as Caroline cries for help. As he enters Caroline's room, he enters with the rope rolled down. He throws his cricket ball in and it comes out the other way. He ties a rope around, but Diane asks if she can go with him, to which the doctor reluctantly agrees. They both enter the void with Adric holding the rope in case they come out. They soon enter and they see a big unexpected red dimension, kind of resembling the planet that appeared in Survival. They step forward and they hear Carol's screams and pleads for help. As they embark inside, they soon come across the creature holding Caroline, where she is given a crown over her head. As the beast, now in the form of a little girl, declares her ruler of the void and will soon set every spirit free to wreck the world and conquer the living for angering the spirits, the doctor asks, "What exactly are you?" The beast says, "I am an entity of time that escaped and reformed into a whole new world. Most people call me the beast in your world. Your daughter Caroline is now much more than a queen. She is my friend, and now under my control. I was supposed to capture more children, but the plan failed, and I only captured one." Diane cries out to Caroline to come to her, but the entity says, "She is under my control now." The doctor reasons with the entity to hand over Caroline, and if that fails, Adric has a machine on standby to try and force the being out. The Beast declines and doesn't negotiate. The Doctor works fast and stalls the Beast as Diane grabs Carolan and the three of them escape from the dimension. The Doctor uses the sonic screwdriver on the machine Tegan made to seal it off, and Steve then runs in to make sure both Diane and Carolan are okay. The Doctor then says, "We're not done yet," as he starts to see corpses rising from the house. The Doctor says, "We need to get out of here," as it cuts to a cliffhanger. Part 4. When the corpses come through the house, the Beast then possesses Tegan, letting out a large roar. Apparitions start to arrive from the portal as well. The Doctor manages to get the feelings out of the house along with Adric. He then uses the device he built to try and get Tegan unpossessed as it holds the Beast back and forces it out of her. The Doctor also gets Tegan out of there too, as he figures out that to destroy the ghosts on the outside, he must destroy the monsters on the inside, and seal the Beast and the Poltergeists into like a Phantom Zone type prison from Superman 2. This causes the house to explode and the Beast to scream and fade into light amongst the stars. The Doctor then says, "This house is cleaned." Later on, everything is back to normal for the Freelings as they start to move the next day. They thank the Doctor and crew for helping them, but before they could depart, UNIT is called in to protect them and to keep a watch over them in case they experience any more supernatural things. The Doctor, Adric and Tegan all say goodbye and head off, and once they're back in the TARDIS, Nyssa slowly wakes up, asking the Doctor what had happened, and the Doctor says, "Oh, just a little bit of ghost hunting," as he sets the TARDIS to Heathrow. Now here's who I would have cast for guest stars. My first casting for Steve Freeling would be to have him played by Michael Kitchen. Even though he only appeared in 1982's King Lear, I feel like he would be free to be included in a guest role. Next name is Diane Freeling, who I considered Francesca Annis, who is known for films such as June 1984 and The Libertine. I felt since she had nothing in 1982, maybe she wouldn't mind guest appearing in Doctor Who. Next up is Dana Freeling, who her actress Dominique Dunn apparently was sadly taken from us too soon. But if I had to cast someone who could fill in the role, I went with Julia Swahala. Now, to be fair, she would have been 14 at the time, but I feel like it could be a good breakout role for her, before she gets considered to play Rain Cunningham for season 27 of Doctor Who, but we know how many times that's been adapted. Maybe for fun, Rain could say in one of the episodes that Dana was a cousin of hers. The next name is Carol Ann Freeling, because, like Dominique, Heather O'Rourke was taken from us too soon. I went with Nicholas Stapleton, who is known for EastEnders and The Tomorrow People. Finally, there is Robbie, who could be played by an unknown actor, to which I couldn't actually think of, but I think the best bet for Robbie has to be Crispin Mayer from The Box of Delights. For the Beast, I think the best that jumps to mind is Gabriel Wolfe. Maybe it could lead to theories speculating that the Beast was probably somehow connected to Sutekh. So yeah, there's my take on if Poltergeist was a Doctor Who episode. There were also some things I know would have to be cut out, like that gore scene in the washroom and the skeletons in the water, which I think were actual real dead corpses that they used, which is kind of creepy. I know some people were expecting Tangina, but I felt literally it'd just be the Doctor in both Dr. Lasher's and Tangina's roles. But yeah, I also understand Poltergeist wouldn't work as a Doctor Who story, but I just wanted to do this as a fun idea. And if you're wondering if I'll ever tackle Poltergeist 2 and Poltergeist 3, I don't think it's going to be very likely to ever happen. But I am keen in exploring more horror movie ideas if they were turned into Doctor Who episodes in the future. Only next time they'll at least fit as a Doctor Who story more. Apologies if my narration of all of that was a bit all over the place. It's quite a difficult read at times, because yeah, some of the grammar's a bit all over the place and stuff, but yeah. I personally think Notty did a great job with that. He kept enough of the original movie whilst also adding in an element of Doctor Who that made sense. Having watched Poltergeist to better familiarise myself with it for this, I don't know if it could have actually worked as a Doctor Who episode, but I respect what Notty was doing with this, and I for one would be fascinated to see more scenarios like this from him. And I also liked how he kind of mirrored how Nyssa ended up being asleep for all of Kinder by having her out of the action for all of this version of Poltergeist. And yeah, it's a bit debatable of like whether the writer Christopher Bailey would mind basically having to junk his own original story with Kinder and replacing it with someone else's, with Poltergeist. But what do you think? Please let me and Notty know in the comments. I'll see if he's able to reply to any questions you might have for him about this scenario. Just remember to be polite to him, please. Now for the third and final scenario, what if Hyde was a Doctor Who Quatermass crossover? Now, for context, Neil Cross was inspired a lot by the Quatermass serials and other Nigel Neal work, The Stone Tape, when writing Hyde. In fact, the Professor character of that episode, Alec Palmer, was originally going to be Bernard Quatermass, the titular character of Quatermass. But due to copyright issues, this sadly never happened. What if things had gone differently? Well, the only issue we'd have to resolve is that rights one. Now, this is a bit of a tricky one, this is just speculation on my part, but I wonder if at least part of the problem was due to Nigel Neal's known dislike of Doctor Who, and his estate perhaps not wanting to feel like they're disrespecting his memory by having one of his characters appear in an episode of it. But that could be completely wrong, really. In fact, it most likely has nothing to do with the rights issues. Anyway, we'll say that Neil's estate is able to come to an agreement with the BBC, and Professor Quatermass is now able to be included in the episode. But how would his presence change the story? Well, in general terms, probably not a lot. He would just take the place of Alec Palmer and fulfill the same role as he did. Perhaps even the romance with Emma could be left in. The Doctor would also be just as impressed with Quatermass's record as he was with Palmer's, perhaps even more so, given their shared knowledge of the alien and supernatural. The production team would most likely just have Alec Palmer's actor Dougray Scott play Quatermass, but I like the idea of having the then latest actor to play him, Jason Fleming, who played Quatermass in the 2005 live remake of the first serial, return to play him instead. Mostly because I think it would just be a neat thing to happen. I think the main difference would be in how Hyde is remembered. It would be a lot more notable for basically being the first ever crossover episode with another show or franchise. And if this stays in its own separate timeline and doesn't tie into any others I've done, probably the only one as well. But beyond that, the episode would play out the exact same as it did in real life, so there isn't really much else I can discuss for this, sadly. So that's it for this 2025 What If Halloween special. I hope you enjoyed it, and please do let me know what your own thoughts on these scenarios are, and whether you would like to see me do another special like this next year or not. Thanks for watching, I hope you liked it. Please don't forget to press that subscribe button below, as well as press the bell icon at the side of it, so that you'll stay notified of when all my new videos come out. And feel free to join my Discord server where we chat about everything from Doctor Who to what if scenarios, and just whatever you want really. You can find a link to it as well as a wiki page for my what ifs in a pinned comment below. And I shall see you all in another video. So until next time, bye bye!